I want to run through this part of this podcast of Sarah Silverman because I want to just point out some of the compartmentalizations that happen with not only celebrities and their sort of ideologue, kind of their love of the Democratic Party and sort of and how they all come out when it looks like something is threatening the control of that the Democratic Party have over a space. But I just wanted to point out this battle that is going on Twitter between the fake left, that is, the Democratic Party and their ideologues, including celebrities, many celebrities, and the far right, and also the GOP, which is, you could say, far right as well. And this sort of fake battle that's going on Twitter since Elon Musk took over, where the people who love the Democratic Party think that Twitter was a space for free speech before Elon Musk took it over. Now, I don't know if they sincerely believe that, whether they say that sort of thing in bad faith or good faith, I don't know. But whatever the case, it's an incredibly clueless thing to say that Twitter was free speech before Elon Musk took it over. The only reason there's such a kerfuffle about Elon Musk taking over Twitter is that basically the Democratic Party via Jack Dorsey, who sold out, who left Twitter. He was controlling Twitter and then he sold it. And his buddy is Elon Musk, by the way. And Jack Dorsey has a social media sort of platform, I think, that he is arranging called Sky something, and Sky Blue or something like that. And, Twitter was, I felt, had become almost unusable. And that because for people who are anti-imperialist, anti-war, and who are trying to put out, and those who are trying to put out real leftist journalism, real independent journalism that isn't partisan, that is just putting out journalism and actually holding governments to account, no matter what party is in control. We are the ones that are getting done over and have been silenced and censored and shadow banned and all of that for years. I mean, my account on my Faint Signals from Vega account on Twitter is almost unusable at this point. I mean, I've talked about this a few times now on YouTube, that when I comment on someone's post, a politician or whatever, or or I make something about, most of my posts, 99% of everything I post is political. It's usually anti-imperialist, challenging, the dominant propaganda narrative about war and about different countries, etc. If I comment underneath someone, it's usually underneath their post. If I come in on another account and have a look at it, it's not there. Or it's so far down, it's hidden way down in the replies. That same goes for YouTube. Anyway, I won't go into that, but it's something that I found across the board now. I don't know if they have some sort of master algorithm for people like me and for people who are anti-imperialist in general and are against apartheid in Israel and all that kind of stuff. I don't know, but it seems like it's across the board for me. But anyway, so people like me and independent journalists, I'm not a journalist, but independent journalists, etc., we have been silenced for a very long time in numerous ways. And it's the people who are, who love AOC, and they're right into the Democratic Party. They're doing fine, thank you very much. And, the far right and people, sort of who support that, all of that, and Trump and all those kind of people, they haven't been doing as well, but they've certainly been doing much, much better than people like me, getting their voices heard in the town square. So watching this sort of fake battle, really, it's basically who gets to control the speech, so-called free speech on Twitter, who gets to control the narrative, who gets to censor what they want and doesn't have to worry about anybody interfering with that. And I mean, we've heard that, either party will contact, Twitter and sort of say, well, I don't want this particular thing on. And that's been going on for a while. And so I don't know why anybody thinks that whoever has more control of Twitter is going to be allowing more, free speech, because it's never been the case. It's been heavily censored topics for quite a while now. So it's sort of really dystopian, but at the same time sort of amusing to watch this sort of battle for free speech when it doesn't really exist anyway, for anti-imperialists and those who support Palestinian rights and that kind of thing, or who are giving out the real narrative about what's really happening in Ukraine. I mean, people have no idea. A lot of people have no idea how much they don't know and how much unbelievable propaganda they're being fed by the corporate media. They have no idea. If they don't have some sort of independent source, and I'm not talking about Alex Jones and people like that, and I'm not talking about grifters to the right like Glenn Greenwald and Matt Taibbi and people like that, Jackson Hinkle, Jimmy Dore, and there's quite a list now of people who seem to pretend they were on the left but now are just grifting to the right, and they're just conservatives that are transphobes and all that kind of stuff. COVID deniers in a major way. I mean, they can't see, even though it's sort of, it's 3 years now since COVID started, they're still going on and on and on about this, with this and that about it. So anyway, this is watching Sarah Silverman today, and I kind of, she's got problems and she's really actually pretty clueless about politics, unfortunately, but most celebrities are who follow the Democratic Party. She's probably a little bit different in that at one point she was for Bernie Sanders, and now, even though that was a pointless exercise, and we're going to have round 3 of Bernie Sanders soon, and he's just going to relent, to the Democratic Party and start promoting whoever it is, Biden or Buttigieg or whatever. But anyway, so it's fascinating listening to people and how duped they are. I don't think she's saying these things in bad faith, but just have a listen to how duped, and I'll just make a few little comments.
Hey, I wanna. Hey. Hi. Hey, ya fucker. Hey. So Elon Musk bought Twitter, and he's just all over the place. He's all over the place. I don't know this guy. I mean, I have met him a couple of times, but he's for democracy. Then buys Twitter.
I mean, what does that mean? He's for democracy. Does anybody really think a billionaire who's bordering on, eventually he'll probably be a trillionaire? Does anybody think anybody who's a major capitalist in the absolute 1%, the less than 1%, would be interested in democracy? The reason they got to where they are is because they've been stomping on workers' rights and exploiting the hell out of people and doing dirty deals with government and lobbying government and all of that. And I mean, he's the guy who said to somebody on Twitter a few years ago, he said, we'll coup whoever we want, deal with it, when that person was talking about Bolivia. And, that's because he wanted the lithium in Bolivia. And so he was really, really anxious for Bolivia to be overthrown. So, and that is capitalism in a nutshell. It's inextricably linked with imperialism, because the nature of capitalism is inherently exploitative, and it needs to just gobble up and invade and take over different countries and steal their resources and steal their money. And this is what they want to do in Latin America, even though there's a sort of a one sort of election after another. It seems like it's actually going more to the left and more towards socialism, which is a great thing. But, people like Elon Musk want to see that end. They want Bolivia and all the different countries in Latin America. They want them to be taken over by preferably sort of fascist-like people who the US can control, and then just, privatize everything and take their resources. So anyway.
He's the most powerful person in the world now. He can basically control elections. He's said in the past, like...
Hello, this is like the corporate media can basically control the narrative in elections. And Elon Musk, yes, he's very powerful because he owns the town square basically now. And this is what's fascinating to me. Who does Sarah Silverman and other people like her think owned the town square before Elon Musk? basically Jack Dorsey, and he had a lot of allegiance, it appears, to the Democratic Party, and whatever they wanted, it seemed like he would go along with it because he didn't want his corporations to be interfered with by the Democratic Party. So it's like a tit for tat. If the person who owns Twitter does some bidding of a certain party, either the GOP or the Democratic Party, then they don't have to worry too much about that party interfering with their business. And you'll notice if Elon Musk is probably he's grifting more to the right, to the GOP and to the far right, because he can see where his bread is buttered. He can see that at some point the GOP, probably in 2024, is going to win the election, and it'll either be DeSantis or Trump. And he thinks if he curries favor with the far right and with the GOP, that when the time comes, they will be kind to him and his businesses and his and help him, give him kickbacks like they do with anybody who helps them. It's like look at Sam Bankman-Fried, the crypto guy who owned FTX and basically was using FTX as his own personal bank and taking customer money. He and his friends at FTX taking customer money and and sort of leveraging it and spending and buying properties and all sorts of things. And you only have to see the way he's like a Bernie Madoff character, and so is the person who ran Alameda Research, who was his ex-girlfriend. Her name was Caroline Ellison. Both of those people are just free. They're not in handcuffs like Bernie Madoff. And excuse me, Sam Bankman-Fried, I'll call him SBF. He was giving huge donations to the Democratic Party, so that to try and also he was trying to consolidate his power in the crypto industry. So he was trying to trying to get them to bring in legislation that would affect other exchanges, other centralized exchanges like Binance and Kraken and Coinbase and all these different ones. And he was using, as lobbyists do, it's just a form of bribes. He was, I think he might have even given $1 billion to the Democratic Party. And you can tell that by the way people like, say, Maxine Waters talks to him on Twitter. And, they're incredibly, even though he's stolen billions of dollars from retail investors who are on FTX and also from institutions, he's not in handcuffs. He's not in any jail cell waiting for a court date. He's actually in the Bahamas. And he's also sort of doing all these interviews with the corporate media, and the corporate media are treating him like he hasn't done anything wrong. So, this is where you can tell, it's as corrupt as all get up. And Elon Musk I'm sure he's been probably making donations to both parties, just as SBF was making donations to the Republican Party as well. But obviously, because the Democrats are in power at the present moment, he's been throwing money at them because he wanted to be king of the hill. Anyway, I've gone off track here, but this is really a pay-to-play situation. And Twitter is just a billionaire's playground now, where he makes one little comment on Twitter and stocks can fall and stocks can rise, and he owns the town square. And some people are deluded, particularly people that are on the right, who think that they've been hard done by when they have no idea how the real left, the anti-imperialist left, how they've been treated. But they think, oh, great, now free speech can come back. And apparently, on top of this sort of delusion about democracy and free speech in any platform, because they're all just propaganda arms of the U.S. national security state, this is an absolute illusion that anybody thinks that, it's just this, we're watching this pretend battle on Twitter for quote-unquote free speech. And it's just this people having a tantrum because they're not able to control the whole town square anymore. The Democratic Party is upset. People who support them are upset because they can't control the town square anymore. And it's just swapped hands to another form of censorship, but also an increase in hate speech. There's like 200% increase in racist content against black people. There's increase in transphobia, people being transphobic and all that on Twitter. I mean, it's just a cesspool. And to be honest, I feel like in some ways this is a good thing that's happened, because it now makes people who, it brings to the attention, even though this is a fake battle going on for quote unquote free speech, it brings the attention to the fact that that it's really whoever owns this town square, they can put out whatever propaganda they want, and they can censor other people's propaganda, meaning, the faux news that comes out of the corporate media. If they don't like those, like, for example, Trump hates the corporate media that are, favoring the Democratic Party, and kind of rightly so, with the whole Russiagate nonsense, which was mostly just an invention started, with the DNC leaks, and then, Hillary Clinton getting her nose out of joint because she thought she lost the election because of because of these leaks. And, it's just this, it's kind of sickening, really, and stomach turning to watch, because this is so dystopian what's going on. Anyway, let's just listen to more of Sarah Silverman here.
Now he can basically control elections. He's said in the past, like, Twitter's job is to be neutral, non-political. Then he just tweeted.
That's ridiculous. It's never been. Of course, it's not going to be non-political if you're basically grifting to the right and you're kind of doing that because you want to curry favor with the Republican Party and people who support them, and heaven knows the right loves throwing money at people who support transphobia and all that kind of stuff, and homophobia. If Sarah Silverman thinks anything was good beforehand, then she's living in a little bubble.
That everyone should vote Republican. It's bizarre. He says he's a freedom of speech absolutist. Well, we put that to the test. Like, I made my entire identity the same as his. Like, I put his picture, his bio, his background, whatever, and I'm verified, and I have millions of followers or whatever. And I just tweeted as him, and immediately.
And by the way, this whole verified, unverified thing, what a classist, ridiculous, fucking tiered system that is. The fact that people who have a blue check beside their name, this is before Elon Musk, and they happen to be celebrities, what gives them, people who are actors and comedians, etc., what gives them this echelon of their comments and their tweets are always highlighted in the feed? Who made them kings and queens and also arbiters of what, basically whose speech is more important than other people's speech? It's just almost like this feudal system where celebrities are like lords and ladies. And now we have like some ruler, Elon Musk. But this whole blue check nonsense, I get that people don't want people pretending to be them if they happen to be a public figure. But at the same time, why does their tweets and their replies, etc., why do they float to the top? And yes, I use that word intentionally. Why do they float to the top all the time? When really, a lot of these people, most of them, 99% of them, have absolutely no clue what's going on. There's probably only 2 celebrities that I think have a clue, and one of them I think is Susan Sarandon, and even she in some ways is a little bit, she sort of still seems to believe in Bernie Sanders a bit, even though he's let people down twice already, and it looks like we're in for a 3rd round of nonsense. And I doubt that he was ever going to be much anyway. He was an imperialist through and through. Who was the other one I was thinking of that wasn't too bad? There was some other celebrity who, oh God, their names just escaped me. By the way, I broke my little toe yesterday, and so I'm a bit distracted. I couldn't believe I did it, but anyway, I'm a little bit distracted by that, so excuse me if I'm a bit flaky when I'm talking about this issue. But there's some other celebrity, I wish I could remember who it is, who's actually kind of a bit, who looks like they have a clue. But that's about it. Anyway, I might think of it toward the end.
Got suspended and had to change my name back and click a thing admitting that what I did was wrong. And
I'll just skip forward.
That's good, because he was just he's selling blue checks or whatever. And now because it happened to him, he's going to.
See, now everybody's upset because of this whole blue check bullshit. I mean, it shouldn't even fucking exist. And this is how sort of deluded people who have them are. I mean, I know, like I say, I think it's good that some people have them. Like, I think it's great if, say, if it stops people impersonating people, but at the same time, it shouldn't be a case where you get clueless celebrities. They're nonsense. They're absolute clueless nonsense about what's going on in Ukraine. I mean, if you saw Mark Hamill from Star Wars, he was he was sort of starting up some sort of donation thing for a drone program for Ukraine. I mean, these are people who say, that they want peace in the world and stuff, and everybody looks up to them for some reason. And the next thing he's putting money together for Ukraine for drones. And by the way, and Elon Musk had the Starlink program that was basically putting them on various Ukrainian weapons and on boats and stuff that were designed to help with the war. Help the Ukrainians win, in quotes, the war. I mean, these people are heavily involved in imperialist endeavors because they're Democratic Party ideologues. And, well, Elon Musk isn't, but Elon Musk is just a capitalist who wants war to continue so he can keep, benefiting from the resources of those stolen resources of those countries.
Boy, he is so powerful. And again, his ego controls so much, and
Yeah, he's very powerful and people should be concerned, but they should have been concerned before Elon Musk because the corporate media is so powerful and because the US national security state is so powerful. If Sarah Silverman, if she knew what was going on, how much, I'm sure she's anti-war. Why? But she's not saying anything. I don't think she likes war, but she's still supporting the Democratic Party. So how on earth could she possibly know she couldn't know what the Democratic Party's doing, because how could you support a party where, like, for example, Obama expanded 2 wars to 7, and although Trump didn't start any new wars, he was escalating all the current wars, and he killed Soleimani. He assassinated Soleimani with a drone strike, and that kind of thing. I mean, both these parties are imperialist warmongers who are corrupt thieves, basically. They're just lining their pockets. And that's what and most governments, I'd say, most governments that are in the West, or all of them really, are problematic, very problematic, and very part of the ongoing wars that are in the world right now. And so anyway, it's so fascinating. I just sort of think, I don't understand how people who are intelligent can sort of still be supporting the Democratic Party, and why they can't look outside their own country and see, like, for example, at least Australia, we have a lot of problems here, but at least we have a preferential voting system, and we have more than 2 parties to vote for in every federal election. But a lot of people in the US can't seem to grasp the fact that you can't say you have a democracy if you really don't have anybody else that you can vote for. And that we already have this problem where in every federal election here in Australia, it's only 2 parties that get up on stage and talk about their platforms and debate one another. We don't get to hear from other parties. There is a party in Australia, I don't know a whole lot about its background, but, they're one of the very few anti-imperialist parties. It's called the Citizen Party. You never even hear about that. The corporate media here is completely sewn up by Murdoch. And so we never hear about anything else but actually the usual far-right type parties. They'll promote that, and they consider themselves kingmakers because they control the narrative here in Australia. And they are the powerful ones. Elon Musk is powerful, yes, but the corporate media is basically controlling any sort of narratives that happen today, and everything else is being censored. And it's being both major parties in the US are quite fine with the corporate media controlling the narrative, but they want their narrative out there, and they want anti-war voices silenced.
I think is vindictive, and it's really scary. I keep kind of poking and saying stuff, but then I get a little scared. But then,
well, join the club. Anti-imperialists have to, every time you post something that goes against the US national security state narrative, you either know that you're not going to be heard, or you're being censored, or at some point they might just get absolutely sick of you at some point and just go delete, and that's the end of it. I mean, I'm no fan of Jackson Hinkles at all. I mean, he's just a grifter of the highest order, and it's just appalling watching him. I don't watch him anymore, but I mean, I stopped watching him a long time ago, but he's become more and more of a right-winger. But he was apparently suspended for saying something that I think was true about Ukraine, and so he was suspended. Now, I'm not sure if that was the only reason, but it's like suspended on Twitter. So, it's like if you're actually trying to put out stuff that's actually real, and now I don't know what it was that he put out, but if you're actually trying to put out stuff that's real about what's happening in Ukraine, e.g., that Russia is basically winning, in whatever that means, but winning this war in Ukraine, and that and all this stuff that the corporate media is putting out about, Ukraine is winning and all this sort of stuff, that's just propaganda that is designed so that the public will accept more and more weapons going to Ukraine because they're winning, in quotes. And it's just feeding the weapons industry, and Ukraine is just a money laundering thing, really, for, to the weapons industry and to, I mean, FTX apparently was basically fueling the Ukrainian war, sending funds to Ukraine, and Zelensky had something to do with FTX. This is Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX. So, and FTX was also associated with this bank called the Farmington Bank, which it looks like it's just basically a money laundering bank. So, they've been using FTX. I don't know if the CIA has been using FTX and this Farmington Bank probably to launder money. So, there's all sorts of absolute outrageous things. And that's probably another reason why Sam Bankman-Fried is never going to see the inside of a jail cell, because he's been either knowingly or as a useful idiot for the U.S. empire and helping with the funding of the war in Ukraine, for the U.S., the proxy war in Ukraine. So all these things, I mean, it's just a shit show of the highest order, what's going on today. Just a dystopian, it's so far gone. It's really, really disturbing. But anyway.
If you're scared into not saying anything, that's the whole point, right? So
Isn't it sad, though, that she thinks now suddenly, things are bad. And this is, suddenly, we don't really have freedom of speech anymore on Twitter. And she really has no idea what it's been like for people who are actually trying to put out real information that isn't through the lens of some party, that isn't through the lens of a billionaire or the capitalist class or the corporate media. It's actually real information. I mean, how does she think we've all felt for years and years now? And she's only just realizing, or only just experiencing to a little extent, what the real left has been experiencing for years, and it's only going to get worse. And she'll probably feel totally fine when he sells it, right? Which he probably will. He's probably just doing this as a promotional thing for himself and for Tesla and for the SpaceX program and all of that. This is just a branding exercise for Elon Musk. It's got nothing to do with free speech or anything else. It's also that he's currying favor with the far right so that when they get into office, they'll be doing him favors and he'll be doing them favors and all of that. So, and then she'll probably, Sarah Silverman and all the other celebrities who are totally duped or know which their side of their bread is buttered, they're going to go, oh, thank goodness. Now we can return to normality. Now we can return to and have free speech on Twitter. They have no idea. No idea. And I don't think in some ways a lot of them are in such a bubble. And also they benefit greatly from the status quo, that they're afraid that the status quo is being upset by a billionaire. And like, for example, Rosie O'Donnell, I remember way back in early 2000s when she was on The View, she would complain and she was very, 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 very vocal against George W. Bush and the Iraq War. And I was thinking, great, she's really, really upset about the Iraq War and she's angry about it. And she was having arguments on there and stuff. And eventually they got rid of her from there. I don't know if it was because of that, but, they got rid of her. But anyway, after that, after George W. Bush was kicked, was out of office, you didn't hear her complain at all for 8 years about Obama and expanding wars and stuff. It's like it was all fine then because it was all about her hating the GOP, and she only complained about the war and what George W. Bush was doing because it was George W. Bush and the GOP. And they're not so friendly towards celebrities, the GOP. They don't like Hollywood. So that's really, I thought, wow, that was all it was about, really. And then she never made a peep during Obama. And in fact, she doesn't even make any statements, even when Trump was in office. She doesn't seem to care anymore about war. So that was just some temporary little glitch in her. And she realizes, I think she got the message, or maybe she just doesn't care anyway. But I think she got the message via her celebrity friends or via the Democratic Party or whatever, that being anti-war isn't something that's popular, isn't something that is advised. So just shut the fuck up, Rosie O'Donnell, and sit back with everybody else and just allow the deep state, the U.S. national security state, just allow them to continue on with the warmongering. Doesn't matter who's in office, and you just accept that and allow that to happen. That's something that should never be questioned. So, anyway.
Really, it's very interesting watching what's going on over there on Twitter. And then I remember it's just an app and I get off of it and I go, right, this isn't real life. And yet, is it? I don't know. I don't know what real life is anymore. I don't know what it's going to be.
It's such an example of, that saying, during the World War II with Auschwitz, or whether first they came for this one, then they came for that one, then they came for this one, and I didn't say anything, and then finally they came for me, and there was nobody left to speak out for me. This is sort of reminds me a little bit of that, where people think that they're invulnerable to, that I think a lot of those celebrities, when they have the Democratic Party in there, they think they're protected and it'll always be that way, and they'll always have the things they have and the voice they have and the ability to rub shoulders with the powerful and all this kind of stuff. And then somebody else looks like they're not on their side, and then they start to get all nervous. And I think there is a lot of people now realizing that they probably haven't quite put it into words, but I think they're feeling the creeping fascism. Well, I wouldn't call it creeping. It's kind of galloping, really. The creeping or galloping fascism that's coming to the United States. And by the time DeSantis gets in, if that's who gets in 2024, I mean, you only have to see things like not allowing women to have control over their own bodies, with having to be able to have terminations. I mean, that's if this happened in Russia or something, where people where abortion was banned, you'd never hear the end of it. It's sort of like there are things going on already in the US that are just so fascist-like, and it's got all the 14 characteristics of fascism, and they can't even see it in their own country, like that. I mean, you get women being kind of really shocked about these abortion bans taking place in various states. And yet this sort of stuff, the stacking of the Supreme Court with Christian fascists like Amy Coney Barrett, this has been going on now, stacking the Supreme Court for a while. And now, we'll probably find when there's an election, if say, the GOP candidate doesn't win, they're going to go to the Supreme Court, just like Al Gore and George Bush, that situation, and they're going to default to the far right candidate. So, it's right there in front of them, and they can't even, celebrities live in their little bubble, and all they really care about is maintaining the status quo, because it benefits them. It doesn't even sometimes matter who's in office, because they always protect the wealthy, right? But I think they can feel some things are changing and not in their favor, and that's why they're feeling scared. But sadly, if they thought that the people who are not wealthy, who are poor, people have been affected for a long time by this inequality and the inequity and everything, and they're starting to feel a little bit afraid that something isn't going very well for them, and that they might be affected. It wasn't a problem much for most celebrity. I'm not including necessarily Sarah Silverman in this, but because she seemed to have a little bit of a social conscience about this sort of thing. But it's like people in celebrities and people in this kind of God realm where they can have everything they want are starting to feel a little bit uneasy that something isn't right, and maybe they don't have enough. Maybe they're losing their power base, their control.
The election happened on Tuesday. Don't have all the results yet, but who knows? Not feeling amazing. What's going to happen to misinformation? He says everything. He says, oh, we've got it covered. Like I just posted, he said in a big interview, no, all that stuff is still in place, even though we all know he fired all the people that handled like misinformation and lies. No, we have it all in place. If anyone says hate speech, it will get taken down like within minutes. Meanwhile, I searched on Twitter my name and kike, and just endless tweets come up. All I'm saying, I'm not to make it about me. I just don't want to do it about somebody else. But no, there's definitely hate speech up there. Maybe he's just not talking about Jews. I don't know. What's going to happen?
And I mean, yeah, anti-Semitism is terrible, and but I mean, this gives you a little example of how the compartmentalization. So Kanye West, or Ye as he calls himself, he's I don't know why people are still interviewing him or paying attention to him, because he's in a full-blown sort of bipolar episode, and he's lost the plot. Not that when one is bipolar you're going to be saying racist stuff. That's not part of it. But I mean, he's obviously got some issues there. But it's full blown, and he's paranoid about a particular group, and it happens to be Jewish people, right? So he's saying all sorts of crazy things, including things about Hitler. So, but everybody's kind of freaking out about this particular person, this celebrity, right? Who's very wealthy, by the way, a billionaire. Even with all these losses he's suffering because of his hate speech and stuff, he's still very wealthy, and he'll probably continue to be wealthy. People don't realize, or people don't care, but people that are in the Democratic Party, people who love the Democratic Party and all of this, and think that Twitter was free before Elon Musk, they don't care that the Democratic Party, the government, the U.S. government has been fueling the war, this U.S. proxy war in Ukraine, and giving Nazis hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars, basically. Giving Nazis money, funding them. That's what the Biden administration has been doing. So that's okay, giving Nazis billions of dollars and people who are far right billions of dollars. That's fine. But Kanye West, oh no, that's not fine. That is, get him off, get him away. That's a bridge too far. He said Hitler was okay or something like that. I love the way Hitler was terrible and stuff. I love the way, though, it's seen as the ultimate evil when, of course, the U.S. empire has basically killed 20 million plus people since World War II with their wars, and destroyed countries and invaded countries, like 60 plus countries since overthrown governments, or attempted to overthrow 60 plus countries since World War II, and has displaced hundreds of millions of people, refugees, etc. And that's not seen as evil. That's not seen as some sort of equivalent Hitler-esque type behavior in the world. I mean, seriously, 20 million people. Yes, like Hitler intentionally targeted a group and then sort of talked about them like they were vermin, and used the word extermination, and killed 6. Well, the Jews weren't the only people who were killed, who were murdered by Hitler. There were other groups, including gay people, etc. But it's like people can't see the equivalence of what the U.S. empire has been doing, to either targeting Muslims and locking them up and throwing away the key and Gitmo, and destroying their country, and leaving genetic, using bombs that have radioactive particles in them, and children are being mutilated, having genetic mutations and deformities when they're born. In Iraq, there's a genocide going, and an ongoing genocide in Yemen that's been happening since 2014 under Obama. There's been tens of thousands of children have been killed, have died in that the US-backed Saudi genocide of Yemenis since 2014. Who's talking about that? Isn't that Hitler-esque? Just allowing a genocide to go on unabated? What about, the things that have been, what happened in Iraq in the 90s? 500,000 children died under US sanctions, which is an act of war. That was a genocide. This compartmentalization of what the US does, which is under this BS of humanitarian reasons, and in the name of good and all of this. I mean, and then making out as if Hitler is some special case. It's just, I mean, we've really got to get over that. The US empire has been behaving like Hitler now since World War II in particular, and we need to stop making out as if it's just sort of like, I just find it amazing that people aren't able to see the whole picture and what's been going on. And that's where racism comes in and xenophobia and capitalism. Because if we weren't racist and xenophobic and we weren't benefiting in some way from these constant wars, imperialist wars, we probably would be saying something. But because we're benefiting and because we're racist here in the West, we're okay with it because we are benefiting. Just like we're trying to do here in Australia with this, the government here is trying to take us into a war with China because we think we're going to benefit in the end. I mean, it is the most misguided thing one could witness what the government is doing here.
I don't know what's going to happen. I'm on the edge of my seat. I hope we make it as a democracy, but
I hope we make it as a democracy? Seriously? It's an oligarchy. I mean, it's not a democracy in the US. In fact, they're basically ushering in fascism. You can't call anything a democracy that is basically sort of screwing over black people and trans people, and women now don't have control over their own bodies. And I mean, and they're invading countries, and I mean, and they've got the kind of politicians they have, like Lauren Boebert and some others that are in the Democratic Party that are as bad as these people, but they just pretend they have this respectable veneer, but they're doing awful things. I mean, even Bernie Sanders before that last election was saying he would consider bombing Iran, a country of 80 million people. And that's the best that they had to offer at the time. So, it's sad. But anyway, I feel sad that people are like mushrooms being fed shit. They don't even know what they don't know. And Sarah Silverman, who's probably one of she's all over the place like a dog's breakfast sometimes, but I think she does care. But she obviously doesn't seem to have a clue. She says the Democratic Party on one hand is garbage, but was then talking about that she loves Pete Buttigieg. I mean, don't these people do any sort of research? Any sort of research at all? Anyway, that's really all I wanted to say. I just find it fascinating that just watching how suddenly when people don't have when people suddenly, like celebrities and people who are for the Democratic Party, when they suddenly feel like they don't have control of the town square, suddenly they're all talking about how afraid they are and how they reject Twitter and all this kind of stuff, when really it's only really because they don't have control of it and they don't have control of the narrative anymore. And that's not free speech. Them controlling the narrative doesn't mean that that's free speech. It just means they control the propaganda that's going out there instead of the far right. And now we might have the far right controlling the propaganda. There's nothing free speech about any of that. And the real left are always going to be censored, shadow banned, and suspended from Twitter. That just goes without saying, and any other social media platform.